All right, y'all. First and foremost, want to give all praise to y'all by showing y'all shall come. I just want to deal with that devout from my brother. I know last class. It's two words actually that when you give to Cornelius, again, we build up. We were taught when we came into this truth. We were taught how to defend certain things, certain problematic texts, like your John 3:16, like your Ephesians 2:8 9, like your um, this incident with Cornelius, because they are problematic texts. If we do say Cornelius is a Gentile, um, that brings in a lot of other things that you have to tear down. So you can't have Cornelius being a Gentile. He needs to be an Israelite for a lot of the one West doctrine to hold up. Let's look here at Acts. And so we fight with these two words. Devout. Cornelius was devout, so he got to be an Israelite. Cornelius, um, and then the respect of persons, which I'll do in another short video. 17. Let's just go to chapter 17. All right, here we go. Now when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and in 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the scriptures. All right, we see Paul teaching. For those talking about, well, they stopped teaching on the first Sunday. They changed it to the first. They changed it. So Paul reading with these folks 3 consecutive Sabbaths. Um, Verse 3, opening and alleging that Christ must needs have suffered. Again, what is Paul teaching? The death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. All right. And that this Jesus whom I preach unto you is Christ. He's trying to convince the Jews, trying to convince, those that are in their synagogue, but mainly the Jews because Gentiles in there, they don't know what's going on. They're just trying to learn from the Jews. They're just trying to follow the Jews. And so now you have someone else coming in with this contention. You have these new folks coming in with, somebody else coming in with something different. But this is what he's trying to convince these people that was the Messiah that y'all killed. And some of them believed and consorted with Paul and Silas. Okay, who is the them? All right, who is the them? Some of them believed and consorted with Paul and Silas, and of the devout Greeks, a great multitude. So there were devout Greeks. You had some of them who have to be somebody other than the devout Greeks. I allege that these are the Jews. And some of the Jews, or the proselytes some of the Jews and proselytes that were there, some of them believed and consorted with Paul and Silas. They believe and they went up to Paul and they start sharpening their sword like, yeah, man, you know what? That makes sense. Da 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 da, really woo. And of the devout Greeks, a great multitude. So we see devout Greeks here. Let's look at this word. Greeks, Helen. We know that. Uh-oh. Hold on. Oh, oh, my phone. My phone is crazy. All right, we know that word there. Let me see if we hit that. Okay, we got the etymology. Show the Strong's info. A Hellen, a Grecian, or an inhabitant of Hellas by extension, a Greek speaking person, especially a non Jew. Okay, especially a non Jew. All right, Gentile or Greek is used 20 times for Greek, 7 times for Gentile. Um, let's hide the Strong's information. Strong's info. Oh, biblical usage. A Greek, neither by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies. In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. Right? Primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. And we got to understand too, man, these are epistles. These really, these really aren't written, um, it's really not a play by play. Like these things are written later. It's information that's known. When we read Acts, we recounting Acts. We thinking that this thing happened. If Paul's epistles are the first thing that came out, and then later comes Acts, later comes the Gospels, then we have to understand that these things already played out. So if somebody is confused on somebody's ethnicity, it can be you had decades to change these things or to explain um, the difference of these ethnicities of these different ethnic groups, how you're using it. But if a Jew is writing this, if we're thinking that a Jew is writing this for Jews, um, yeah, it's almost like a Mexican calling people gringos, you know. And he only calls somebody a gringo. And this, you know, a Mexican a gringo, um, as a joke or something like that, or as a derogatory word. Um, but for the most part, right, for the most part, he's gonna call a gringo somebody from another country or somebody from America. All right, somebody from America, somebody that's new to this thing. He's going to call a gringo. All right, so most times, especially, this word is not going to be used for a Jew. Okay, it's not going to be used for a Jew. All right, so let's go back. Let's go back, and we know where Paul. Paul is in Thessalonica. All right, so we see that, and some of them believe, which I allege is the Jews, and consorted with Paul and Silas, and of the devout Greeks, a great multitude. Okay, of the devout Greeks. All right, and really devout. Anyone can be devout to anything. Okay, you could be devout to your job. You could be devout to, or devoted to getting money. You could be devoted to Christ, to God. You could be devoted to different idols. You could be devoted and devout to your relationships. It's a certain commitment that for one to be devout. Okay, it's an adjective. It describes a person. Um, let's look at it here though, if I can find it. Um, devout, devout. Here we go. Show some Strongs. Primary verb to revere, i.e., adore, devout, religious, worship. Um, worship, devout, religious. It's used for devout three times. Um, well, we see the devout Greeks of it, but we're gonna keep going. Okay. Well, no, we're gonna go back. I'm sorry. We gotta look at the biblical usage. To revere, to worship. Okay. To revere, to worship. If you look it up in English, um, we know what devout means in English. All right. But it's to reverence, to revere, or to worship. And again, you can revere anything and you can worship anything. You can worship money. You can worship your wife. You can worship, like, anything can become an idol or something that you are devout or devoted to. Um, but let's look at verse. Let's drop down. We see here with the devout Greeks. Watch this. And the devout Greeks, a great multitude, and of the chief women, not a few. Okay, who are the chief women? Who are chief women? Is this the verse? Yeah, what is it? What is a chief? Oh man, y'all bear with me, y'all. Oh, I just say him with the Greeks. Mm, the chief women. Chief women. Contracted superlative before beginning best, chiefest, first former. Biblical usage. First in place, first in rank, influence, honor. Chief, principal, the influential. All right, the influential women. And who would be the influential women? It'll be those in some kind of political position. But we know in Caesar, in Rome, I don't think there was women in political positions that are in high ranking positions. This is later. You see this thing in some other instances where it will say the prominent women or the wives of prominent men. I don't know if you ever seen that movie Gladiators, where they were enslaved, but the woman she didn't really had no power, but she had influence because she controlled her husband. You know, she could make her husband go kill somebody. If you did something wrong, or if you didn't sleep with her like she wanted, she could get her husband to kill you. So the women had that respect also when they was dealing with prominent men. All right, but the chief women also. Are we saying the chief women are? Are we saying that the chief women are Jews? You know, that's what we'll have to. That's what we'll have to go with. All right. It says, but the Jews which believe not move with envy. Okay, so you had the Greeks, the devout Greeks of a great multitude. You had the Jews that believe, Greeks of a great devout Greeks of a great multitude, and you had chief women, not a few. Okay, a lot of prominent women that were prominent uh in Roman society. Uh, they or Gentile society, they ain't Thessalonica, but it's still all the stuff you dealing with the Roman dominance, all right. But the Jews which believe not, so you had Jews that believe, devout Greeks, chief women, and then you had Jews that didn't believe, all right, and that they were moved with envy and took upon them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort. Okay, but let's go down to 17. Let's go down to verse 17. It says, therefore, let's start at 16. It says, Paul at Athens. He at Athens now. Now, while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was stirred in him when he saw the city wholly given to idolatry. Therefore disputed he in the synagogue with the Jews. Okay, the whole place was filled with idolatry, the whole city. And so we know he in the Gentiles. We know he in Athens. We know where Athens at. Therefore disputed he in the synagogue with the Jews and with devout persons. Okay, so he disputed in the synagogue with the Jews and with devout persons. Who are devout persons? Who are those? Devout persons. Sable. Strong's info of an apparently uh, verb to revere to adore. It's the same word. It's the same word here. Zabel. We had that biblical. Let's look at biblical usage. To revere, to worship. Yeah, it's the same word as we seen in verse 4 for devout Greeks. Okay, so you had Jews he was arguing with, but um, then you had some devout persons. Let's look at what devout persons is that word. Let's look at let's see if we can find comparative text on that. 17:17. And this is what I'm saying about translations. You put devout persons there, but it's only the only word there is devout. But to make this make sense, They had to add the persons. Okay, but the only word there is devout and the devout. Okay, which would have made sense. Um, but if we look at it in other do comparative texts, as well as in the marketplace data. Oh, I'm sorry. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God fearing Greeks. He went into the synagogue to reason with Jews and God fearing Greeks. New KJV. Therefore, he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and with the Gentile worshippers. And even there, the Gentile is italicized. It was added for, um, to give clarity. All right, because all it would say, and the God fearing. It was the Jews and the God fearing, but it's still two different categories. It's Jews and God fearing. Um, so it'll be, if we read it the way if we're saying that these people are Jews, so he reads it in the synagogue with the Jews and the God fearing Jews. That that'll be a little problematic. And so we see all the other ones, God fearing Gentiles, God fearing Gentiles. Um, so he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and with those who worship God. Yeah, I like that too. And he reasoned with the Jews and the devout persons, um, with the Jews and with the Gentiles in the good news. That thing there, man. I don't recommend using that. But literally, this is the literal standard version. And therefore, indeed, he was reasoning in the synagogue with the Jews and with the worshiping persons and in the marketplace every day. Okay. So he was going with them and worshiping persons and in the marketplace every day. All right, so that devout there for me also is well these devout persons for me are Gentiles. You had Jews and then you had devout persons. Those devout persons would be Gentiles. Not to say that the Jews aren't devout, but if you're gonna put it because it's you would think the Jews would be devout, period. You know what I'm saying? But you'll put that stamp on them um because Gentiles ain't it's a little different. It's a little different for Gentiles. Gentiles being dedicated to this thing. Um, the writer may feel that needs to be brought out. So it ain't necessary to say devout every time you put Jews next to it, or every time you put see Pharisees, you put he's a devout Pharisee. It's just when it needs to be um, when it needs to be brought out. These certain individuals like Ananias and Cornelius, and to show that these people are well trusted and God fearing, and they on their P's and Q's, and this is why they're being used. Let me look it up. But to say that the devout persons and devout Greeks, can't nobody be devout except Israelites. That 17:4, you'll have to deal with that, and that 17:17, you will have to deal with that also. Also in Acts 10, I'm gonna get ready to rally this thing on in. Acts 10 and Acts 10, he's gonna Cornelius gonna send his servants out. Mm, Peter said, "Follow me." Centurious, a just man, one that feared God, and of a good report. I wonder if that fear of God is Sabo. Let me see real quick, yeah. One that fear, nah, it's for OB. Fear. But anyway, I don't want to get into that right now. Let me get y'all up out of it. Let me get y'all up. I try to get y'all up out of here. It gotta be up here. Do. Where he sends his folks out. That's Peter. There we go. Verse 7. He called two, and when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called two of his household servants and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. Okay. And a devout soldier. How was the soldier devout? Because he waited on him continually. He was dedicated to Cornelius. He was a dedicated soldier. He called two of his household servants and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. Now, could this devout mean he's a God fearing? It's a God fearing soldier. It could be. It could be he's a God fearing soldier. Um, I think the continue to wait on him uh, kind of deals with shows me the devotion. It shows me it kind of for me it gives me the an explanation for his devotion, where it places where his devotion is. Just like a lot of times when you see Ananias was a devout person, one who kept the commandments of God. You know, he's a devout person that waited on him continually. Just shows me where his devotion is. It places his devotion for me. Um, but if you want to say he's a God fearing soldier, um, we still don't know if this is a Greek or a Jew here, a Greek or a Jew here. So, even if we didn't have that, I would just default and go to, yeah, he's probably a Gentile, especially with me understanding that Cornelius is a Gentile, a devout soldier. I would place him also as a Gentile. Even the servants, I would place as Gentiles, even though it don't have to necessarily be. Um, but we have to understand too, man, that we do got our own land still. Um, our people could go back to their own land, but that's all speculation. That's all speculation. So, devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. I placed that devotion on Cornelius, that this soldier was devout to Cornelius. And I'm only using this to show that, man, just every time you see devout, it ain't necessarily um, to the to the Most High. Maybe it's not necessarily to the Most High all the time. And the devotion could be placed on anything, but usually it tells you he's a devout man that does blah 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 blah. It shows you the devotion. It shows you what it's tied to, and this why devotion in the English language is they considered it a verb here in the Greek, but in the English language it's an adjective. It describes a person. It describes a person in the text. We saying a person is devout. That is a description of this individual. Now, what is he devout to? Um, right here, I say this person is devout to Cornelius and serving him. All the other ones I've seen is devotion to the Most High, or not necessarily, because it's also some that um, when they say they're a devout person, they just devout. It's another one, y'all. Acts 13. Let's look at this one too. Acts 13 and we preached the next day. Gammon. Okay, Acts 13 and 50. It says, but the Jews stirred up the devout and honorable women, all right, and the chief men of the city. The Jews went and they wanted to get Paul and okay, they wanted to get Paul and them out of the region. Right, and the word was published throughout the region. They went to the devout and honorable women and the chief men of the city and raised persecution against Paul and Barnabas. They went to the political leaders. okay, and raised up persecution for Paul. What Jew in the city of a in the could raise up what Jew is over a city, a Gentile city, and can come in and raise up persecution against Paul and Silas? Okay, the Jews are going to different people. They're not going to the Sanhedrin. They're going to Gentile leadership. All right, chief men, devout and honorable women. Uh, verse 51 says, but they shook the dust off their feet against them and came to Iconium, and the disciples were filled with joy and with the Holy Ghost. So these people are raising up persecution. Let's look at that devout. Let's see if it's Sabo. It is Sabo. It is Sabo. Strong's info. See, revere, adore, worship, um, to revere, to worship. Now, is it necessarily that these devout and honorable women are let's look up honorable that are Jews, or is that devotion to God? Is the devotion to God? Do we have that information? Calmly, honorable, biblical usage, of good standing, of an elegant figure, shapely, graceful, calmly bearing oneself, becomingly in speech or behavior. All right, and we know what chief men are. Okay, first we looked up that up also. The first, um, let's go here. Let's go here. Let's look this up because it's usually like a little footnote. I looked at a footnote last time. Hold on, y'all. Acts 13. What was that? 1350. 1350. See if we can look find some uh, different texts. Yeah, but the Jewish leaders incited the God-fearing women. Okay. God-fearing women of high standing and the leading men of the city. All right. The Jews stirred up the influential Lord of Christ. Devout, but the Jews incited and the devout women of high standing and the leading men of the city. Um, then the Jews stirred up the influential religious women and the leaders of the city. They incited a mob against Paul. New King James. They stirred up the devout and prominent women of the city, of prominent women and the chief men of the city. But the Jews incited the devout women and the devout women of prominence. So they could have still been. You have a couple that's showing that the women were God fearing, okay, um, and prominent women, and the chief men of the city, uh, devout women of prominence and leading men of the city. Incited the prominent women who worship God and the leading men of the city. So the devotion could be, as I see some devotion that devout still dealing with. They were God fearing on some of these different translations, and it's almost like a half and half where they're saying that also um, these are religious leaders, uh, not necessarily pointing to God, but they're just religious leaders in the city, um, and they're prominent, and they're prominent in their prominence, and the chief men of the city. And I was saying earlier about that prominence, them being. I seen another footnote where it was saying that the prominence probably came from the husbands, and so they're probably dealing with husband and wife in this probably situation, looking at at the top families and going in there and trying to incite a mob or trying to rally these people up to get these people kicked out of the region. And I yield with that, man. I hope this thing was edifying. I just gave y'all the tools instead of just giving you the information. Just read 17 fold. I'm just showing you also how I check certain things when I don't know. All right, when things are can go either way, look at other do comparative text, look at other translations, see what other people were thinking, um, and then you make a decision off of all the information that you've collected. You don't just have to follow a particular translation. You let the spirit kind of say, "Hey, oh, you know what? That makes the most sense." So if you believe this or not, and I'm just here to give the information and hold the Most High, um, make this word where it could be helpful for our brothers and sisters and bring some clarity. So, with that, man, um, does devout only apply? Anytime you see devout, it only apply to Jews. I don't hold that stance. Um, and the next video I'll probably be doing is dealing with um, the respect part of um, this Cornelius commentary. All right, y'all, man. Y'all be blessed. Pray this day was edifying. Shalom.